Sarah Parker's trembling fingers clutched the crumpled resume against her hospital gown as fever ravaged her body. Through blurred vision, she watched her 4-year-old daughter Lily sleep in the plastic chair beside her bed. "I failed you," she whispered, tears mixing with sweat on her cheeks. "Mama can't even get you that interview tomorrow." The paper slipped from her hand, falling silently to the floor, a dream dying in real time. But what Sarah didn't know was that her daughter wasn't sleeping. Lily's eyes were wide open, absorbing every broken word her mother spoke. And in that moment, something shifted in the little girl's heart, a decision that would change 3 lives forever. Stay with me until the end of this story and comment which city you're watching from. I want to see how far Sarah and Lily's journey reaches across the world. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital hummed their monotonous song at 3:47 a.m., casting sickly shadows across room 304. Sarah Parker hadn't slept in 42 hours. Not because the fever wouldn't let her, though it clawed at her bones with relentless fury, but because tomorrow was supposed to be the day. The day. The interview that would finally pull them out of the quicksand they'd been drowning in for 4 years. She stared at the water-stained ceiling tiles, counting them for the 100th time. 43 tiles. 43 chances she'd wasted. 43 doors that had slammed in her face since she'd dropped out of college to raise Lily alone. "Mama!" Sarah turned her head too quickly, and the room spun like a carnival ride. Lily stood beside the hospital bed, her pink stuffed bunny Mr. Hoppers dangling from one hand. Her daughter's eyes were too knowing for 4 years old, ancient with wisdom that poverty carved into children far too soon. Pondered first mini-climax involving Lily's interview approach. Mini-climax 1. Lily asking about the interview. "Baby, what are you doing awake?" Sarah tried to smile, but her cracked lips protested. "You were crying in your sleep." Lily climbed onto the bed with practiced care, avoiding the IV tubes. "About tomorrow. About the lady on the phone." Sarah's heart cracked open. That phone call, Ms. Henderson from Braden & Co. Her voice sharp as broken glass. "Ms. Parker, we have 15 candidates. If you're not here at 9 a.m. sharp, we'll move to the next applicant." "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just—" Sarah's voice broke. She couldn't lie to those eyes. Not to Lily, who'd watched her work 3 jobs, who'd learned to make peanut butter sandwiches at 3 years old because Mama was always too exhausted to cook, who'd never once asked why other kids had daddies and nice houses and toys that weren't from thrift stores. "You're going to miss it." Lily stated it as fact, not accusation. "The interview." "I'll reschedule, baby. No, you won't." Lily's small hand found Sarah's fevered one. "You told Grandma on the phone. This was the last chance, the last company that would even talk to you." When had her daughter become so perceptive? When had she stopped being a child and become this tiny adult carrying burdens no 4-year-old should understand? Sarah pulled Lily close, breathing in her baby shampoo scent, the cheap kind from the dollar store, but it smelled like everything good in the world. "I'm so sorry, Lily Flower. I'm so sorry Mama keeps letting you down." "You never let me down." Lily pulled back, her expression fierce. "Never, Mama. You're the best mama in the whole world." Identified mini-climax involving Lily's resume discovery. Mini-climax 2. Lily finding the resume. That's when Lily noticed the paper on the floor. She slid off the bed and picked up the resume, studying it with the intensity of a scholar examining ancient text. Sarah watched her daughter's lips move as she traced her finger over the words she couldn't read yet, but somehow understood. "This is what you need for tomorrow?" Lily asked. "Yes, but—" "Then I'll take it." The words hung in the air like a question and an answer all at once. Sarah blinked, certain the fever was making her hallucinate. "What?" "I'll take it to the interview." Lily's voice held the same determination Sarah had heard when her daughter declared she would tie her own shoes, would cross the monkey bars alone, would be brave when the doctor gave her shots. "I'll go instead of you." Sarah's laugh came out as a sob. Baby, you're 4 years old. You can't. Why not? Lily climbed back up, sitting cross-legged on the hospital bed like she was negotiating for an extra cookie. I know where the big building is. We walked past it 17 times. You always point and say, that's where Mama's going to work someday. Lily. I know the address. 1847 Corporate Drive, Suite 2100. I remember everything, Mama. Everything you say. Tears blurred Sarah's vision. Oh, sweetheart. Even if you could get there and you absolutely cannot go anywhere alone, they wouldn't let a little girl into a job interview. Lily tilted her head, considering this logic with the seriousness of a lawyer preparing her case. But what if I tell them my mama is the smartest person in the whole world? What if I tell them you can do anything? Analyze story's emotional arc and mini-climax development. Mini-climax. 3. Sarah's breakdown and Lily's resolve. That's when Sarah broke. Not the quiet tears she'd been holding back, but the kind of crying that came from somewhere so deep inside, it hurt to breathe. 4 years of working until her hands bled of skipping meals so Lily could eat of watching her daughter wear shoes 2 sizes too small, because new ones weren't in the budget of lying awake calculating whether they could afford both electricity and water this month. It all came pouring out. I can't give you anything, Sarah sobbed. Not dance lessons, not birthday parties, not even ice cream. What kind of mother? The best kind. Lily pressed her small hands against Sarah's wet cheeks. You give me everything, Mama. You give me you. In that moment, watching her daughter, this impossible, beautiful, brave little girl, Sarah saw the future she was fighting for. Not just a job, not just money, but the chance for Lily to believe that courage meant something, that hard work mattered, that single mothers weren't disposable. I love you more than all the stars, Sarah whispered, pulling Lily close. More than all the moons, Lily whispered back, their ritual since she was born. They fell asleep like that, tangled together in the narrow hospital bed, Sarah's IV beeping its steady rhythm like a lullaby. Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through the blinds and a nurse checking her vitals. The fever had broken sometime in the night, leaving her weak but clearer-headed. Where's Lily? Panic seized her chest. The nurse smiled. The little one. She went to the cafeteria with Mrs. Chen, your neighbor. She brought you both breakfast. Sarah collapsed back against the pillows. Mrs. Chen. Thank God for the 68-year-old woman who lived in their apartment complex, who watched Lily when Sarah worked late shifts, who never asked for payment except the occasional container of Sarah's homemade soup. But something felt wrong. Identified Sarah's dramatic moment of discovering Lily's absence. Mini-climax 4. Sarah discovering Lily is gone. The resume was gone from the nightstand where Sarah had placed it. No, 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 no. Where's Mrs. Chen? Sarah tried to sit up too fast, and the room tilted. Where's my daughter? The nurse's smile faded. She was just here, hon. Let me page. But Sarah was already up, yanking the IV from her arm, despite the nurse's protests, stumbling into the hallway in her hospital gown and bare feet. She found Mrs. Chen sitting in the waiting area, eating scrambled eggs from a styrofoam container. Where's Lily? Mrs. Chen's face went pale. She said she needed to use the bathroom. She had her bunny, and a paper said she wanted to show you. She stood, eggs forgotten. Sarah, what's wrong? But Sarah was already running her weakened legs, barely holding her up, nurses calling after her. She checked the bathroom, empty. The cafeteria, no pink dress. The lobby. That's when she saw it through the glass doors, a flash of pink disappearing around the corner, a small figure clutching something white against her chest, moving with purpose toward the bus stop. Lily! But her daughter was already too far away, and Sarah's legs gave out. She collapsed against the hospital wall, and all she could think was the address Lily had recited last night. 1847 Corporate Drive, Suite 2100. Oh God. Her baby was going to the interview alone. Tigged. Crafted mini-climax narrative for Lily's bus scene. Mini-climax. 5. Lily on the bus. Lily had never been on a city bus by herself. She clutched the exact fare Mrs. Chen had given her for the cafeteria, 3 quarters, 2 dimes, and a nickel, and held up the dollar bill she'd found in Mama's purse last week. She'd been saving it for a rainy day. This felt like a rainy day, even though the sun was shining. "You sure you know where you're going, honey?" The bus driver was a large woman with kind eyes and skepticism written across her face. "Yes, ma'am." Lily used her most grown-up voice, the one she practiced when playing pretend with Mr. Hoppers. "Corporate drive, please." The driver studied her for a long moment, the pink dress that Mama had made from a tablecloth, the scuffed shoes with the tape holding the sole together, the white paper clutched like a treasure map. "Where's your mama?" "She's sick. I'm going somewhere very important for her." "Boy." Something in Lily's voice must have convinced her because the driver sighed and waved her on. "Sit right behind me where I can see you." Lily climbed onto the seat, her legs swinging high above the floor. She smoothed out the resume on her lap, tracing the letters of Mama's name. Sarah Elaine Parker. Education, 2 years at State University. Skills, Microsoft Office Suite, customer service. Data entry, administrative support. Experience. A long list of jobs, none lasting more than a year. Because Mama always got laid off, or the company closed, or someone decided a single mother wasn't reliable enough. But Mama was reliable. Mama was the most reliable person Lily knew. The city rolled past the windows, tall buildings that made Lily's neck hurt to look up at them, people in suits walking fast, like they had somewhere important to be coffee shops, where fancy drinks cost more than Mama spent on groceries for a week. Mapped out mini-climax for Lily's dramatic building arrival. Mini-climax. 6. Lily's arrival at the building. When the bus stopped at Corporate Drive, Lily thanked the driver and stepped onto the sidewalk. The building in front of her made her feel very small. It was all glass and steel reflecting the clouds like it was part of the sky itself. A fountain in front sprayed water in perfect arcs. Men and women rushed past her, their shoes clicking on the marble. "Excuse me," Lily said to a man in a gray suit. He didn't stop. "Excuse me," she tried again with a woman in high heels. The woman glanced down, startled, and kept walking. Nobody saw her. She was too small, too young, too invisible. But Mama needed her to be brave. Lily walked through the revolving door. It took her 3 tries to get the timing right and found herself in the largest room she'd ever seen. The ceiling was so high it could fit 10 of her apartments stacked on top of each other. Everything smelled like expensive perfume and leather and money. A security guard with a name tag reading Marcus stood by the front desk. He noticed her immediately, probably because she was the only person under 4 feet tall in the entire building. "Hey there, little lady. You lost—" Lily shook her head. "No, sir. I'm here for my mama's interview. At Braden & Company, Suite 2100. Marcus blinked. Then he smiled the kind of smile adults use when they think kids are cute but not serious. "Honey, where's your mama?" "She's in the hospital. She's sick with a fever. But this interview is very important, so I came instead." Lily held up the resume like proof. "I have all her information right here." Pondered mini-climax involving Marcus's phone call and response. Mini-climax 7. Marcus calling up and the response. The security guard's smile faded. He crouched down to her level, and Lily saw his eyes were worried. "Sweetheart, you can't be here alone. Does anyone know where you are?" "I know where I am. I'm at 1847 Corporate Drive, Suite 2100. And I need to see the person who interviews people." Lily's voice cracked a little on the last word. "Don't cry. Don't cry. Mama needs you to be strong." Marcus looked torn between calling the police and calling the elevator. Finally, he pulled out his radio. "Hey, Janet, I've got a situation in the lobby. There's a—" Well, there's a kid here, says she's here for an interview at Braden & Co. A crackly voice responded. A kid, how old? Maybe 4 or 5. Marcus looked at Lily. How old are you, honey? 4 3/4. Static silence. Then, is this a joke? I don't think so. She's got a resume and everything. Marcus held the paper up to examine it. Sarah Parker. Interview scheduled for 9 a.m. More silence. Then a different voice came through the radio, deeper male with the kind of authority that made even the security guard stand straighter. Send her up. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Sir, are you? I said send her up. I want to meet this child. The elevator ride to the 21st floor took 47 seconds. Lily counted the way Mama had taught her when she was scared at the dentist. The elevator music was soft and pretty, and the walls were mirrors that showed her from every angle. She looked very small and very pink in all that shiny silver. Mapped out mini climax involving office arrival and Janet meeting. Mini climax 8. Arriving at the office meeting. Janet. When the doors opened, a woman with white hair and sharp eyes was waiting. Her name tag read, Janet Morrison, Executive Assistant. You must be Miss Parker, Janet said, and Lily couldn't tell if she was amused or annoyed. I'm Lily Parker. Sarah Parker is my mama. I see. Janet studied her with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. And your mother is? In the hospital with a fever, but she really needs this job. Lily held out the resume with both hands like she was presenting treasure to a queen. She's really smart. She knows all the computers, and she can type really fast, and she never gives up even when things are really hard. Janet took the resume, her expression unreadable. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, follow me. They walked down a hallway with carpet so thick Lily's footsteps made no sound. Giant paintings hung on the walls, abstract swirls that looked like someone spilled paint and called it art. Mama would have laughed at them, would have said, "We could do better with finger paints." They passed offices with glass walls where people sat at computers or talked on phones or wrote on whiteboards covered in numbers and charts. Some of them noticed Lily. Most didn't. Janet stopped at a door made of dark wood. A gold plate read, Albert Braden, Chief Executive Officer. Wait here. Janet instructed, her voice softer now. She knocked twice and slipped inside. Lily could hear muffled voices. A man's deep rumble. Janet's clipped responses. Words she couldn't quite make out, but the tone felt important. Pondered Lily's emotional state during pivotal interview moment. Mini Climax 9. Lily, thinking while waiting, internal worry. Lily's hands started to shake. What was she doing here? She was 4 years old. 4-year-olds didn't go to job interviews. They went to preschool, except Mama couldn't afford preschool, and played with toys, except they didn't have many toys, and watched cartoons, except they'd sold the TV 3 months ago to pay rent. What if they called the police? What if they put Mama in trouble for letting her daughter ride the bus alone? What if the door opened? Janet gestured her inside. Mr. Braden will see you now. Lily stepped into the office and her breath caught. It was like walking into a castle. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city buildings, stretching out like a kingdom made of glass and steel. The desk was larger than Lily's entire bedroom, made of wood so dark and polished it reflected the ceiling lights. Bookshelves lined one wall filled with leather-bound volumes and awards in crystal, and photographs of Mr. Braden shaking hands with important-looking people. And behind the desk sat a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a storybook about kings or presidents or people who ran the world. Identified key narrative twist involving Albert Braden's introduction. Mini Climax 10. Meeting. Albert Braden. The major twist. Climax. Albert Braden was not what Lily expected. She'd imagined someone old and mean with a scowl and cold eyes. But Mr. Braden was younger, Maybe Mama's age or a little older, with dark hair starting to gray at the temples and eyes that looked tired in a way Lily recognized. The same way Mama's eyes looked tired. The kind of tired that came from carrying heavy things for a very long time. He stood when she entered, which surprised her. Adults usually didn't stand for kids. "Miss Parker," he said, and his voice was the warm rumble she'd heard through the door. "Please have a seat." The chair in front of his desk was huge. Lily had to climb onto it, and even then her feet dangled high above the floor. She clutched Mr. Hopper's tighter and placed the resume carefully on the desk between them. Albert Braden sat back down and picked up the resume. He read it slowly, his eyes tracking each line. Lily watched his face for clues. Was he impressed? Disappointed, angry that a little girl had wasted his time? Finally, he looked up at her. "So," he said, "tell me about your mother." And in that moment, Lily realized this wasn't a joke or a trick. He was actually asking. He actually wanted to know. So she told him. "Mama is the best person in the whole world," Lily began. And once she started, the words poured out like water from a broken dam. "She works 3 jobs. She cleans offices at night when I'm sleeping. And then she goes to the diner in the morning to serve breakfast. And then she has another job doing phone stuff. I think it's called customer service. She comes home really late, and her feet hurt really bad, but she always reads me a story before bed. Always." Albert leaned forward, listening with an intensity that made Lily feel like every word mattered. "She dropped out of college to have me," Lily continued, "because my daddy left when I was a baby. Grandma says Mama gave up everything for me. But Mama says, I didn't ruin her life, I made it better. She says, I'm her whole world." Crafted emotional narrative arc for heartwarming family story, mini-climax. 11. Lily's ice cream revelation. Lily's voice got quieter. She never buys anything for herself, ever. She wears the same 2 dresses and she fixes her shoes with tape because new ones cost too much. But you know what she wants most in the whole world? "What?" Albert's voice was gentle, almost a whisper. "She wants to buy me ice cream every Saturday." Tears pricked Lily's eyes. "That's all. Just ice cream. She says if she gets this job, if she gets a real job with real money, she'll take me for ice cream every Saturday, and that would make her the happiest woman alive." A strange expression crossed Albert Braden's face. His jaw tightened. He looked away toward the windows and the city beyond. And when he looked back, his eyes were different. Softer. Sad. "What's your mama's name?" he asked quietly. "Sarah. Sarah Elaine Parker." "And what's your name?" "Lily Rose Parker." He reached across the desk and extended his hand. "It's very nice to meet you, Lily Rose Parker. I'm Albert." Lily shook his hand solemnly, the way she'd seen grown-ups do on TV. His hand was warm and strong and gentle. "Tell me something, Lily. If I gave your mama this job, what would she do with it?" Lily didn't even have to think. She'd be the best worker you ever had. She'd never be late, never call in sick, even when she is sick, and she'd work harder than anyone. Because that's what Mama does. She works hard so I can have a better life. Pondered Albert's pivotal decision in narrative development, mini-climax. 12. Albert's decision forming Albert Braden was quiet for a long time. Then he pressed a button on his desk, and Janet's voice came through a speaker. "Yes, sir." "Janet, can you come in here, please?" Janet entered, her expression carefully neutral. "I need you to call St. Mary's Hospital," Albert said. "Find out which room Sarah Parker is in, and send her flowers. The expensive ones, with a card." Janet's eyebrows rose slightly. "What should the card say, sir?" Albert looked at Lily, and something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition, a moment that felt bigger than words. "Write to the strongest woman I have yet to meet. Your daughter is remarkable. Let's talk about giving you both the future you deserve." He paused. "Sign it, a friend who understands sacrifice." Lily's heart soared. Did that mean was he going to Miss Parker? Albert said formally, standing again. Would you please tell your mother that I'd like to reschedule her interview for tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Tell her that I'll be sending a car to pick her up from the hospital. And tell her—" His voice caught slightly. "Tell her that her daughter is the bravest person I've met in a very long time." Mapped out Lily's pivotal office departure moment. Climax 13. Lily leaving the office with hope. Tears streamed down Lily's cheeks. "Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Albert." "Just Albert," he corrected gently. "Now, let's get you back to your mama. I'm sure she's very worried." By the time Janet had called a car service and personally escorted Lily back downstairs after giving her a cookie from the break room and making sure she had juice and a blanket, Sarah had somehow convinced a nurse to let her borrow scrubs and shoes, had signed herself out against medical advice, and was standing in the lobby of Braden & Company, with mascara-streaked cheeks and wild eyes. Lily. Lily had never seen her mother run so fast. Sarah grabbed her, pulling her into a hug so tight it hurt, sobbing into her hair. "Don't you ever do that again. Do you understand me? I thought I lost you. I thought—" Sarah pulled back, checking Lily frantically. "Are you okay? Did anyone hurt you? What were you thinking?" "I was thinking," Lily said quietly, "that you're the best mama in the world, and these people needed to know that." Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. That's when Janet appeared beside them. "Mrs. Parker." Sarah looked up, eyes red and swollen. "It's Miss Parker. And I'm so sorry. I don't know what my daughter told you, but I swear I didn't. I would never." "Your interview has been rescheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m., Janet interrupted gently. "A car will pick you up from the hospital at 1:30. Mr. Braden is looking forward to meeting you." Pondered Sarah's emotional journey and narrative mini-climax 14. Sarah's shock and realization. Sarah blinked. Once. Twice. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your daughter made quite an impression." For the first time, Janet smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Mr. Braden doesn't usually conduct interviews himself, but he's making an exception." Sarah looked down at Lily, then back at Janet, then at the massive building towering above them. "I don't understand. She's 4 years old. How did she even—" "She took a bus," Janet said. "Alone. With your resume. And she told Mr. Braden that her mother's greatest dream was to buy her ice cream every Saturday." Sarah's legs gave out. She sank to the marble floor right there in the lobby, pulling Lily into her lap, and cried. Not sad tears this time. Not frustrated tears, or hopeless tears, or exhausted tears. Hope tears. "Mama." Lily touched her mother's wet cheek. "Did I do good?" "You did." Sarah's voice broke. "You did something impossible, baby girl. You did something I've been trying to do for 4 years." "What's that?" "You made someone see us." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. "You made someone finally see us." That night, lying in their cramped apartment with its peeling wallpaper and rattling radiator, Lily curled against her mother's side. "Mama. Do you think you'll get the job?" Sarah pulled her daughter closer, breathing in her baby shampoo scent, feeling the steady rise and fall of her tiny chest. Out the window, the city glowed with 1,000 lights, each one a story, each one someone's dream or nightmare or moment of grace. Crafted emotional mini-climax for story's first part. Mini-climax 15. Ending part 1 with emotional weight and setup for part 2. I don't know, Lily Flower, but you know what? Even if I don't, we're going to be okay. You know why? Why? Because I have you. And you're the bravest, smartest, most amazing little girl in the entire world. And anyone who doesn't see that is missing out on something pretty incredible. Lily smiled against her mother's chest. I love you, Mama, more than all the stars. More than all the moons, Sarah whispered back. But as Lily drifted off to sleep, Sarah stared at the ceiling, counting not tiles, but possibilities. Tomorrow would come. Tomorrow she would walk into that office, not as a desperate woman begging for scraps, but as a mother whose daughter believed in her enough to walk into a CEO's office alone. And maybe, just maybe, that would make all the difference. On the nightstand, illuminated by the streetlight outside, sat a small white card that had arrived with 3 dozen roses that afternoon. To the strongest woman I have yet to meet. Your daughter is remarkable. Let's talk about giving you both the future you deserve. Sarah closed her eyes, and for the first time in 4 years, she allowed herself to believe that morning might bring something other than another closed door. It might bring an open one. The black town car arrived at exactly 1:30 p.m. as promised. Sarah stood outside the hospital entrance in the only professional outfit she owned. A navy blazer she'd bought at Goodwill 3 years ago, paired with a white blouse that she'd ironed 4 times that morning until her hands cramped. The skirt had a small stain near the hem that she'd tried to hide with a safety pin. Her shoes were the same ones she wore to the diner, buffed with petroleum jelly to make the worn leather shine. Lily clutched her hand, wearing her pink dress again. Sarah had tried to leave her with Mrs. Chen, but her daughter had looked at her with those ancient eyes and said, "You need me there, Mama, for good luck." The driver, a silver-haired man with kind eyes, opened the door. "Miss Parker." Sarah knotted her throat too tight to speak. She'd thrown up twice that morning, partly from nerves, partly from the lingering effects of the fever. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Mama," Lily whispered as they slid into the leather seats that smelled like money and possibility. "Breathe. Like we practiced." Sarah closed her eyes and counted to 4, breathing in, held for 7, exhaled for 8. The technique she'd learned from a library book about managing anxiety. It barely touched the terror clawing through her chest. What if yesterday was a fluke? What if Albert Braden had simply been charmed by a 4-year-old in a pink dress but would take one look at Sarah and see what everyone else saw? A desperate single mother with an incomplete degree and a resume full of gaps and failures. What if this was just another door about to slam in her face? Except this time it would hurt worse, because Lily had given her hope. "Miss Parker." The driver's voice pulled her back. "Mr. Braden asked me to give you this." He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a note handwritten in elegant script. "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more. Your daughter showed me that yesterday. Now show me what you can do. A.B." Sarah read it 3 times. Her hands stopped shaking. The lobby felt different today. Yesterday, in her borrowed scrubs and panic, she'd barely noticed the grandeur. Now, walking through those glass doors with Lily beside her and her worn portfolio under her arm, Sarah saw it clearly. The marble floors polished to mirrors the chandelier that probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 years. The waterfall wall that whispered with manufactured serenity. Marcus, the security guard, recognized them immediately. His face broke into a genuine smile. "Well, if it isn't the little lady and her mama. You two caused quite a stir yesterday." "I'm so sorry about that," Sarah began, but Marcus waved her off. "Don't be. That little girl of yours? She's got more guts than most adults I know." He handed them visitor badges. "Mr. Braden's waiting for you. 21st floor." In the elevator, Sarah caught their reflection in the mirrored walls. She looked tired, poor, desperate. Everything she'd spent 4 years trying not to look like. Beside her, Lily looked small and bright and impossibly brave. "Mama." Lily tugged her hand. "You're going to be amazing." "How do you know?" "Because you're you." The elevator doors opened to reveal Janet Morrison, somehow looking even more formidable than yesterday in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. But her expression softened when she saw them. "Miss Parker, Lily, right on time." She extended her hand, and Sarah shook it, trying not to let her own sweaty palm give away her nerves. "Mr. Braden is finishing a call. Would you like some water?" "Coffee. Lily, would you like some juice and cookies?" Yes, please, Lily said with the impeccable manners Sarah had drilled into her since she could talk. They waited in a small conference room with glass walls overlooking the city. Sarah couldn't sit. She paced, checking and rechecking her portfolio, 3 copies of her resume letters of recommendation from her previous employers, a sample project she'd worked on during her brief time in college. It all felt so inadequate. "Miss Parker." A woman's voice, sharp and professional, came from the doorway. Sarah spun to find a woman in her 40s with severe features and calculating eyes. "I'm Diana Frost, Director of Human Resources. I'll be sitting in on your interview today." Sarah's stomach dropped. Yesterday, Albert Braden had seemed kind, almost sympathetic. But this woman looked at her like she was already tallying up all the reasons Sarah Parker didn't belong here. "Of course," Sarah managed. "It's nice to meet you." Diana's smile didn't reach her eyes. Let's go in, shall we?" Albert Braden's office felt even more overwhelming today. He stood when they entered, and Sarah was struck again by how young he was to have built an empire, maybe 35, with an intensity that suggested he'd compressed a lifetime of work into a decade. But there was something else in his eyes today, something she hadn't noticed in Janet's retelling of yesterday. Loneliness. The kind that came from sitting at the top of a mountain with no one beside you. "Miss Parker," he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm but brief. "Please sit. And you must be Lily." "Hello again, Mr. Albert," Lily said, climbing into a chair that dwarfed her. "Just Albert, remember?" He smiled at her, then turned to Sarah. "I hope you don't mind that your daughter joins us. After yesterday's unconventional introduction, it seems only fitting." Diana Frost's expression suggested she minded very much, but she said nothing as she took a seat and opened a leather portfolio. Albert settled behind his desk, and suddenly the warm man who'd spoken to Lily disappeared behind a professional mask. "Miss Parker, I've reviewed your resume. 2 years at State University Business Administration before you withdrew. Can you tell me why?" Here it was, the moment she'd been dreading for 4 years. Sarah glanced at Lily, who gave her an encouraging nod, then met Albert's eyes directly. "I got pregnant. The father left. My parents offered to help, but only if I gave the baby up for adoption. I chose to keep her and raise her alone." Sarah's voice didn't waver. "I don't regret it, not for a single second." Diana made a note. Her pen scratched loudly in the silence. "That must have been difficult." Albert said, his voice neutral. "How did you support yourself?" "I worked. 3 jobs, most months. Night custodian, breakfast, waitress, customer service, phone lines. Whatever would let me keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. And childcare. I have a neighbor who helps when she can. Otherwise, I bring Lily with me when possible, or I work night shifts when she's sleeping." "That schedule sounds exhausting. How do you manage to be reliable?" Sarah felt the trap closing. This was where they always got her, the single mother question, the "you can't possibly be dependable with a child" question. She'd heard it a dozen times from a dozen employers who'd smiled sympathetically and then hired someone else. "Mama's never late." Lily spoke up suddenly. "Not ever. She sets 3 alarms and she always gets up." Diana's pen paused mid-scratch. Albert leaned forward slightly. "Is that true, Miss Parker?" "I've been late once in 4 years, Sarah said quietly. "When Lily had pneumonia and I had to take her to the emergency room. I called 2 hours ahead to let them know I couldn't make my shift." "And they fired you," Albert said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Why do you want this job, Miss Parker?" Diana interjected, her voice sharp. "What makes you think you're qualified to work at a company like Braden & Co.?" Sarah met the woman's challenging gaze. She could play it safe, give the rehearsed answer about seeking growth opportunities and being a team player. Or she could tell the truth. "I want this job because I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of working 3 jobs and still not being able to afford a birthday cake for my daughter. I'm tired of being seen as disposable because I'm a single mother. And I think I'm qualified because I've done the impossible for 4 years. I've kept a child alive, healthy and happy, while working 70-hour weeks. If I can do that, I can do anything you ask of me." The silence that followed felt like standing on a cliff edge. Diana's expression remained skeptical, but Albert's eyes had changed. That loneliness she'd glimpsed earlier was joined by something else. Recognition. "Tell me about a time you failed," he said. The question caught her off guard. "I'm sorry." "Everyone fails. Tell me about a significant failure and how you handled it." Sarah thought of a dozen safe answers, missed deadlines, dissatisfied customers, minor mistakes. But something about the way he was looking at her demanded truth. "I failed my daughter every day for the first year of her life," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was 19 alone and terrified. I didn't know how to breastfeed properly, so she lost weight. I didn't know you weren't supposed to put blankets in the crib, so I put her at risk. I fell asleep while she was crying because I was so exhausted I literally couldn't stay awake." Tears burned her eyes, but she pushed on. "I failed over and over, but I kept trying. I read every book in the library. I asked for help when I needed it. I learned. And eventually, I figured out how to be the mother she deserved." "And now?" Albert asked softly. "Now I don't fail her. Not anymore." Lily reached over and squeezed her mother's hand. Diana closed her portfolio with a sharp snap. "Mr. Braden, might I speak with you privately for a moment?" They stepped out of the office, their voices muffled through the glass walls. Sarah could see Diana gesturing emphatically, her expression stern. Albert listened, his face unreadable. Sarah's heart sank. She'd been too honest, too raw. She'd revealed too much weakness, and now Diana Frost was telling him all the reasons this was a terrible idea. "Mama," Lily whispered, "it's going to be okay." "You don't know that, baby." "Yes, I do. Because Mr. Albert is good. I can tell." The door opened. Diana strode back to her seat without looking at Sarah. Albert sat down, steepled his fingers, and studied Sarah for a long moment. "Miss Parker, this position is for an executive assistant. It requires long hours, high attention to detail, and the ability to handle confidential information with discretion. The salary is $55,000 annually, with health benefits, paid vacation, and performance bonuses." Sarah's breath caught. $55,000. She currently made $23,000 across her 3 jobs. "The hours are typically 9 to 6 Monday through Friday," Albert continued, "though occasionally I need someone to stay late for urgent matters. Is that something you can commit to?" "Yes," Sarah said immediately. "Absolutely." "Good." Albert glanced at Diana, whose lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm offering you a trial period, 3 months. You'll work directly with Janet, learning our systems and protocols. If at the end of 3 months you've proven you can handle the position, it becomes permanent. If not, we part ways with 2 weeks severance. Does that sound fair?" Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she was hearing. Yes, that's more than fair. Thank you. Thank you so much." Diana stood abruptly. "I'll prepare the paperwork." She left without another word. Albert's professional mask finally cracked, revealing something warmer underneath. "I'm taking a chance on you, Miss Parker. But your daughter took a chance on me yesterday by walking into this building alone. The least I can do is return the favor." "I won't let you down," Sarah promised, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. "I know," he smiled at Lily. "How could you? You've got the toughest boss in the city watching over you." Lily beamed. "Does this mean Mama can buy me ice cream on Saturdays now?" Albert laughed, and it transformed his entire face, made him look younger and more alive. "I think it does. In fact," he pulled out his wallet and handed Lily a $20 bill. "How about you get ice cream today to celebrate?" "I can't accept that," Sarah protested immediately. "It's not for you, it's for Lily, for being brave enough to believe in her mother." Albert's voice grew serious. "My mother was a single parent. She worked herself to death literally trying to give me a better life. I see her in you, Miss Parker, and I think she'd be happy knowing I helped someone like her." The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with shared understanding. Sarah understood then that this wasn't charity. It was honoring a ghost, repaying a debt, finding meaning in a loss that still haunted him. "When do I start?" Sarah asked. "Monday, 9 a.m. sharp." They shook hands, and Sarah felt the entire trajectory of her life shift in that moment. No more 3 jobs. No more exhaustion so deep it felt like drowning. No more choosing between electricity and groceries. No more watching her daughter wear 2 small shoes because new ones weren't in the budget. In the elevator going down, Lily bounced with excitement. "Mama! Mama, you did it! You got the job! We did it, baby girl!" Sarah pulled her daughter close. "We did it together." Outside, the city looked different. The same buildings, the same rushing people, the same distant sirens and construction noise. But everything had changed. Sarah Parker was no longer invisible. She was no longer disposable. She was an executive assistant at Braden & Company, with health insurance, and paid vacation, and a salary that meant they could afford to live instead of just survive. They stopped at an ice cream shop 3 blocks from the office. Sarah ordered 2 cones, 1 chocolate for Lily, 1 vanilla for herself. And when the clerk rang them up, Sarah realized something that made her eyes sting with tears. For the first time in 4 years, she didn't have to check her bank balance before buying something that simple. "Mama?" Lily licked her chocolate cone thoughtfully. "Are you happy?" "So happy, baby. So happy." They sat on a bench in a small park eating their ice cream as office workers hurried past. The autumn sun was warm on Sarah's face, and she allowed herself just for this moment to believe that good things could happen, that hard work could pay off, that courage could be rewarded, that single mothers weren't doomed to struggle forever. Her phone rang. "Mrs. Chen." Sarah answered with her freehand ice cream cone balanced precariously in the other. "Sarah, did you? How did it?" "I got it," Sarah said, and saying it out loud made it real. "I got the job." Mrs. Chen's squeal of joy was so loud Sarah had to hold the phone away from her ear. When she finally stopped, her voice was thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you, darling. Your mama would be so proud." Sarah's mother had died 2 years ago, taking with her any hope of reconciliation. They'd never spoken after Sarah refused to give Lily up for adoption. It was a wound that would never fully heal, but in this moment, Sarah chose to believe that somewhere, somehow her mother knew. And maybe finally understood. That evening, back in their tiny apartment, Sarah made spaghetti the cheap kind, but she added real ground beef instead of stretching it with breadcrumbs. Lily helped stir the sauce standing on a chair to reach the stove, chattering about Mr. Albert and the fancy office and how big the ice cream scoops were. After dinner, after bath time, after the nightly story, Sarah tucked Lily into bed and sat beside her in the darkness. "Mama," Lily's voice was drowsy. "When you work at the big building, will you still have time for stories?" Sarah's throat tightened. "Always, baby. Always time for stories. Promise." "I promise. More than all the stars. More than all the moons," Lily whispered, and her breathing evened out into sleep. Sarah sat there for a long time watching her daughter's chest rise and fall, thinking about the impossible thing that had happened. A 4-year-old in a pink dress had walked into a CEO's office and changed their lives forever. Not through magic or miracles or winning the lottery, but through courage, through honesty, through refusing to be invisible. Tomorrow, she would give notice at her 3 jobs. Tomorrow, she would start worrying about professional clothes and childcare arrangements during her new work hours. Tomorrow, she would begin the terrifying process of proving she belonged in a world that had spent 4 years telling her she didn't. But tonight Sarah let herself feel something she hadn't allowed in years. Hope. Pure, uncomplicated, dangerous hope. And for the first time in 4 years, she fell asleep believing that morning might bring not just another struggle, but an actual future. Outside their window, the city hummed with its endless energy. Somewhere in a penthouse office, Albert Braden sat alone, looking at a photograph of a woman who'd worked herself to death for her son, and wondered if helping Sarah Parker might finally ease the guilt that had haunted him for 15 years. And in a small pink bedroom, Lily Parker dreamed of ice cream every Saturday, not knowing that her single act of bravery had set in motion something bigger than either she or her mother could possibly imagine. The weekend passed in a blur of preparations. Sarah withdrew most of her savings, $300 she'd been hoarding for emergencies, and bought 2 professional outfits at a discount store. The pants were slightly too long, so she hemmed them by hand. Saturday night, her fingers cramping from the unfamiliar work. She practiced different hairstyles in the bathroom mirror, trying to look polished and professional instead of tired and desperate. Mrs. Chen agreed to watch Lily on weekday mornings before preschool started in the fall. Yes, Sarah could afford preschool, now the realization still felt surreal, and pick her up after school started. The logistics were complicated, but manageable. Everything was manageable now. Sunday evening, Sarah ironed her new gray slacks and cream blouse, for the 3rd time laying them carefully over a chair so they'd be perfect in the morning. Lily watched from the doorway. "You're going to do great, Mama." "How do you know?" "Because you're magic." Sarah laughed, but her hands were shaking again. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she made mistakes? What if Diana Frost found reasons to fire her before the trial period ended? "Mama," Lily said seriously, walking over and taking both of Sarah's hands in her small ones. "Remember what you always tell me when I'm scared?" "What's that, baby?" "Brave doesn't mean not being scared. Brave means being scared and doing it anyway." Sarah pulled her daughter close, breathing in her baby shampoo scent, drawing strength from this impossible child who believed her mother could do anything. "You're right," Sarah whispered. "Thank you for being my brave girl." "Always, Mama. Always." Monday morning arrived with cruel punctuality. Sarah arrived at Braden & Co. at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes early, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for escape. She'd left Lily with Mrs. Chen, who'd pressed a thermos of tea into her hands, and whispered, "You've got this, darling." But standing in that marble lobby again, watching people in expensive suits glide past with the confidence of those who belonged. Sarah felt like an imposter wearing a costume. Marcus greeted her with a warm smile. "First day? How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Sarah admitted, and his laugh was kind enough that she almost believed everything would be okay. Janet was waiting by the elevators, punctual as a Swiss watch, holding 2 folders and a tablet. "Good morning, Miss Parker. Ready to dive in?" "As ready as I'll ever be." The 21st floor hummed with morning energy phones, ringing voices murmuring behind glass walls, the sharp scent of expensive coffee mixing with printer toner and ambition. Janet led her past a maze of cubicles, where young professionals typed with laser focus, past conference rooms, where early meetings were already in progress, to a desk positioned directly outside Albert's office. "This is your station," Janet said, gesturing to a workspace that looked more organized than Sarah's entire apartment. 2 monitors, a keyboard that appeared brand new, a phone system with more buttons than she had fingers. "Computer password is your employee number. I'll email that to you. Phone system is straightforward once you learn it. Coffee maker is down the hall, break room has a full kitchen." Sarah set down her purse, and her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Everything was so clean, so expensive, so far beyond anything she'd ever touched. "Hey." Janet's voice softened. "Breathe. I'm going to teach you everything. We'll start slow." But slow was relative. Within the first hour, Sarah learned 3 different software systems, memorized Albert's schedule for the next 2 weeks, figured out how to transfer calls without disconnecting them, and discovered that the coffee maker required an engineering degree to operate. By 10:30, her head was spinning with information expense reports, travel arrangements, confidential documents, meeting protocols, a dozen different ways she could accidentally destroy Albert's entire day. "You're doing fine," Janet assured her, though Sarah caught her correcting a scheduling error Sarah had made. "Everyone makes mistakes the first week." "I can't afford mistakes," Sarah said quietly. "I have 3 months to prove I belong here." Janet paused, studying her with those sharp eyes. "Then let me give you some advice. Diana Frost is going to be watching you like a hawk. She didn't want Albert to hire you." "Why not?" "Because she thinks you're a charity case. She thinks Albert's letting his emotions cloud his judgment." Janet's expression was hard to read. Prove her wrong. Show up early, stay late, ask questions, don't make the same mistake twice. And whatever you do, don't give her ammunition. At 11:15, Sarah's phone rang. The internal line. She stared at it for 3 rings before Janet nodded encouragingly. Sarah picked up, her voice shakier than she wanted. "Albert Braden's office, this is Sarah Parker." "Miss Parker." Diana Frost's voice cut through the line like ice. "Mr. Braden needs the Morrison contract by noon. It should be in the shared drive under legal documents. Can you handle that?" "Yes, ma'am. I'll find it right now." "See that you do." Click. Sarah's hands shook as she navigated the computer system, searching for the Morrison contract. The folders multiplied like rabbits, hundreds of documents, all organized in a way that made sense to everyone except her. She clicked through subfolder after subfolder, panic rising in her throat as the clock ticked toward noon. "Janet?" Her voice cracked. "I can't find it. The Morrison contract. I've looked everywhere." Janet came over, leaned past her, and pulled it up in 45 seconds. "Legal folder then. Contracts then active. See Morrison Industries." "I looked there." Sarah wanted to cry. "I swear I looked." "The search function is your friend. Use keywords." Janet's voice was patient but firm. "Print 3 copies, put them in the blue presentation folders on the shelf, and take them to Mr. Braden's office." Sarah's hands fumbled with the printer, nearly dropping the papers twice. She slid them into folders, straightened her blouse, and knocked on Albert's door. "Come in." Albert sat behind his massive desk phone, pressed to his ear, gesturing for her to enter. Sarah placed the folders in front of him, and he nodded his thanks without breaking stride in his conversation. She turned to leave. "Miss Parker." His voice stopped her at the door. He'd hung up, was studying the folders. "These are perfect. Thank you." 2 words, thank you, but they steadied something inside her that had been threatening to collapse. "You're welcome, sir." "Albert," he corrected gently. "Just Albert." Lunch arrived like a life raft in a storm. Sarah ate the sandwich she'd packed at her desk, not wanting to venture into the break room where other employees gathered their laughter and easy conversations, a reminder that she didn't belong. She was reviewing her notes from the morning when a shadow fell across her desk. A woman in her 30s with red hair and a friendly smile stood there holding a coffee cup. "You're the new assistant. Sarah, right?" "Yes." "I'm Rebecca Chen. I work in marketing." She gestured to the break room. "Why are you eating alone? Come join us." "I don't want to intrude." "You're not. Come on." The break room held about 8 people, all engaged in animated conversation about a campaign launch. The chatter died when Sarah entered, all eyes turning to assess the newcomer. Rebecca made introductions, names Sarah immediately forgot in her nervousness, and patted the seat beside her. "So you're the one with the brave daughter. A man named Marcus. Different?" Marcus from security said. "Everyone's heard the story. 4-year-old walks into the CEO's office for her mom's interview." Heat flooded Sarah's cheeks. "She shouldn't have done that. I didn't know." "Are you kidding?" That's the most badass thing I've ever heard, Rebecca grinned. Albert never personally interviews anyone. You must have made quite an impression. Or he felt sorry for her. Another voice cut in. Diana Frost stood in the doorway, her expression arctic. Let's not romanticize what was essentially a desperate mother using her child to manipulate our CEO. The room went silent. Sarah's face burned with humiliation and rage. I would never, she started, but Diana held up a hand. Save it. Just remember, Miss Parker, that sentiment doesn't keep you employed. Performance does. And so far, you've made 3 scheduling errors, took 20 minutes to find a simple document, and you've been asking Janet questions every 5 minutes. It's her first day, Rebecca protested, but Diana was already walking away. Sarah excused herself and fled to the bathroom, locking herself in a stall, pressing her fists against her eyes to stop the tears. She would not cry, would not give Diana Frost the satisfaction. But God, it hurt. Because part of what Diana said was true. She was slow, she was making mistakes, she was constantly asking for help like a child. A knock on the stall door. Sarah! Rebecca's voice. Don't let her get to you. Diana's like that with everyone. She's right though. I don't know what I'm doing. None of us did on day 1. I once accidentally sent a company-wide email with my grocery list attached. You'll figure it out. Sarah emerged, splashed cold water on her face, and looked at her reflection. Red-rimmed eyes, cheap blouse, discount store pants that didn't quite fit right. But she was here. She'd made it this far. Lily was depending on her. Thank you, she told Rebecca, for being kind. Hey, we single moms have to stick together. Rebecca smiled. Yeah, I heard the story. I've got twin boys. I get it. This place can be brutal, but it's worth it. Just keep your head down and prove you belong. The afternoon brought new challenges. Albert needed her to reschedule 3 meetings, which meant calling important people and hoping she didn't sound as terrified as she felt. One executive's assistant was rude enough to make Sarah's eyes sting. Another kept asking questions Sarah couldn't answer. By 4 p.m., her head pounded and her vision blurred from staring at screens. Miss Parker? Albert appeared at her desk, and Sarah jumped. Can you stay an extra hour tonight? I need help preparing materials for tomorrow's board meeting. Of course. She thought of Lily at Mrs. Chen's, hoped her neighbor wouldn't mind. Whatever you need. They worked in his office as the sun set over the city, turning the glass towers into pillars of gold. Albert explained what he needed. Charts, printed data, compiled presentations, organized, and Sarah threw herself into the work with desperate focus. This was her chance to prove she could handle more than just basic tasks. At 6:30, Albert leaned back in his chair studying the materials she'd prepared. This is excellent work. Really? Really? He smiled, and it transformed his face again, made him look less like a CEO and more like a person. You have an eye for detail. These charts, you reorganized them in a way that tells a clearer story than what I had. Pride bloomed warm in Sarah's chest. Thank you. I just thought, well, if I were looking at this data, I'd want to see the progression differently. Trust that instinct. Albert stood stretched and for a moment looked bone-tired. Go home to your daughter. And Sarah. Yes. You did well today. I know Diana's been hard on you. Don't let it shake your confidence. She thinks you made a mistake hiring me. She thinks I make mistakes hiring everyone. It's her job to be skeptical. He walked to the windows, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city lights. My mother used to clean offices like these at night. I'd do my homework in break rooms while she vacuumed and emptied trash cans. I remember the way people looked at her like she was invisible, like she didn't matter. He turned back to Sarah. You matter. Your work matters. Don't ever forget that. The words hit Sarah like a confession and a promise all at once. She understood then why he'd hired her, not out of pity, but out of recognition. He saw his mother in her struggles, And maybe, just maybe, hiring Sarah was his way of going back in time and giving his mother the chance she never got. "I won't let you down," Sarah whispered. "I know." The first week crawled by like a wounded animal. Sarah arrived early every morning, stayed late most evenings, and spent her lunch breaks studying the company handbook and memorizing procedures. She made fewer mistakes each day, but Diana seemed to catalog every single one. The misspelled email subject line, the coffee she brought Albert that was slightly too cold, the client call she transferred to the wrong extension. By Friday afternoon, Sarah was exhausted to her bones, but she'd survived. 1 week down, only 11 more to prove herself. At 3 p.m., the elevator doors opened, and Lily stepped out, holding Mrs. Chen's hand, wearing her pink dress and the biggest smile Sarah had seen all week. "Mama!" Every head in the office turned. Sarah's heart stopped. What was Lily doing here? Mrs. Chen was supposed to keep her until 6 p.m. "I'm so sorry," Mrs. Chen said breathlessly as they approached. She insisted, said it was important, wouldn't take no for an answer. Lily marched up to Sarah's desk and announced loudly, "It's Friday. Mr. Albert said I could visit on Fridays." "He said what?" Sarah looked around frantically. People were staring. Diana Frost had emerged from her office, expression thunderous. "Is there a problem, Miss Parker?" Diana's voice could freeze lava. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I'll take her home right now." "Actually," Albert's voice came from his office doorway, "I did invite Lily to visit on Fridays." He smiled at the little girl. "Hello, Lily. Right on time." Lily beamed. "Hi, Mr. Albert. I brought you a picture." She held up a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures, one tall with a tie, one medium-sized, and one tiny in a pink dress. "That's you and Mama and me." Albert took the drawing with the seriousness of someone receiving a Picasso. "This is wonderful. May I keep it?" "Of course, Mama says you work too hard and need to remember to smile." Several people tried to hide their laughs. Diana's expression could have curdled milk, but Albert just nodded solemnly. "Your mama is very wise." He looked at Sarah. "Why don't you take an early day? It's been a long week." But the Morrison follow-up can wait until Monday. Go home, both of you. In the elevator, Sarah couldn't tell if she wanted to hug Lily or hide from the embarrassment. "Baby, you can't just show up at Mama's work." "But Mr. Albert said Fridays." He was probably being polite. "No." Mrs. Chen shook her head. "He called me Wednesday. Said Lily was welcome every Friday at 3 p.m. if you approved. I thought you knew." Sarah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So she did both right there in the elevator while Lily hugged her waist and Mrs. Chen patted her shoulder. "That man," Mrs. Chen said softly, "is either the kindest person I've ever heard of or what? Or he's lonely, and you two are filling something broken inside him." The words haunted Sarah all weekend. She thought about Albert's confession about his mother, about the way his eyes looked so tired, about the massive office where he sat alone until 8 or 9 p.m. most nights, about a man who'd built an empire but ate dinner by himself. Monday morning, Sarah arrived to find Lily's crayon drawing framed and hanging on Albert's wall right next to his business degree and awards from Fortune magazine. Something shifted in her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name, didn't dare examine too closely. The second week was easier, the third, easier still. Sarah learned to anticipate Albert's needs, to navigate the office politics, to ignore Diana's cutting comments. She made friends with Rebecca, who invited her to a mother's support group that met Tuesday evenings. She learned the names of everyone on the floor, started contributing in meetings, discovered she had a knack for problem-solving that impressed even Janet. And every Friday at 3 p.m., Lily arrived with a new picture or a story about her week, and Albert would take 15 minutes to sit with her, asking about her favorite books and colors and dreams. The office staff grew to expect it, even look forward to it. Marcus from security started keeping cookies for Lily. Rebecca brought her daughter one Friday, and soon it became a thing, the Friday afternoon, when the executives loosened their ties and the assistants stepped away from their desks to see what Lily Parker had created this week. Diana Frost never warmed to it, but even she couldn't deny that productivity actually increased on Fridays. People worked harder, knowing there'd be a moment of lightness, a reminder of why they were grinding away their lives in glass towers. 6 weeks in, Albert called Sarah into his office late on a Thursday. She'd been preparing to leave, mentally planning dinner she could afford, chicken now, real chicken, not the discount kind, when his door opened. "Do you have a moment?" Her stomach clenched. Was this it? Was he letting her go early? She sat in the chair across from his desk, hands clasped tight in her lap. Albert didn't sit. He stood by the windows, that same tired posture she'd noticed before, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet. "I want to tell you something about my mother." Sarah waited, barely breathing. "She died when I was 15. Stroke. She was 41 years old." He stared out at the city. "She'd been working 3 jobs, sound familiar, trying to save enough for me to go to college. I came home one day and found her on the kitchen floor. She'd been dead for 6 hours. Albert, I built this company for her. Every success, every deal, every dollar. It was all to prove that her sacrifice meant something." He turned to face Sarah, and his eyes were raw with old grief. "But you know what haunts me? She never got to see it. She died believing she'd failed, that she wasn't enough, and I couldn't save her." Sarah's throat closed. "That's not, you were 15. You couldn't have." "I know that. Logically, I know that." He smiled, but it was broken around the edges. "But guilt doesn't care about logic. For 20 years I've been trying to go back and fix it, trying to save her by saving everyone else." Understanding crashed over Sarah like a wave. "That's why you hired me." "Yes, and no." Albert sat, finally leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I hired you because Lily reminded me that courage comes in the smallest packages, because your resume showed tenacity that most of my executives don't have, because you've been doing the impossible for 4 years, and I wanted to see what you could do with actual support." He paused. "But also, yes, because every time I see you with Lily, I see my mother, and I get to give you the chance she never had. It's selfish, really." "It's not selfish, it's—" Sarah's voice cracked. "It's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever done for me." They sat in silence, the weight of confession settling between them like shared communion. Outside, the city glittered with 1,000 stories of struggle and success, loneliness and connection wounds that never quite healed, and grace that arrived in unexpected forms. "Thank you," Sarah whispered, "for seeing us." "Thank you," Albert replied, "for letting me." When Sarah left that evening, something had shifted between them. No longer just boss and employee. Something more complicated, more honest. 2 people carrying their ghosts, finding unexpected solace in shared understanding. The next morning, Diana Frost requested a meeting. Sarah stood outside Diana Frost's office at 8:47 a.m., her hands clammy despite the building's aggressive air conditioning. Through the glass walls, she could see Diana on the phone, her expression severe, as always gesturing sharply. When she finally hung up and waved Sarah in, her smile was the kind predators wore before striking. "Close the door." Sarah obeyed, her heart drumming against her ribs. 2 months and 3 weeks. She'd been so close to making it through the trial period, so close to security. Diana opened a folder, and Sarah's stomach dropped. Inside were printouts, emails, scheduling errors, a coffee order from 3 weeks ago that had been wrong timestamps, showing when she'd asked Janet for help. Every mistake Sarah had made, cataloged and preserved like evidence in a trial. "I've been documenting your performance," Diana said, her voice clinical. 23 errors in 9 weeks. That's an average of 2.5 mistakes per week. "I've been learning. Everyone learns. The question is whether you're learning fast enough." Diana closed the folder with deliberate precision. "The Riverside merger presentation is next Friday. It's our biggest account this quarter, $12 million. Albert wants you to prepare all materials." Sarah's mouth went dry. She'd heard about Riverside, the executive spoke of it in hushed, reverent tones. Everything had to be perfect. Zero margin for error. That's usually Janet's responsibility. Janet is taking her mother to chemotherapy treatments all next week, so it falls to you. Diana's smile sharpened. Consider it your final exam. If you can handle Riverside, maybe you belong here. If you can't, she left the threat hanging. I can do it, Sarah said, though her voice wavered. We'll see. I'll need the preliminary materials by Wednesday for review. That gives you 5 days. 5 days. Sarah walked back to her desk, feeling like she'd been handed a ticking bomb. Janet had been preparing Riverside materials for 6 weeks. Now Sarah had to not just understand everything, but execute it flawlessly. She dove in immediately, canceling lunch, staying until 8 p.m. that first night. The materials were Byzantine financial projections, market analysis, competitive research, legal documentation. Every page seemed to spawn 10 more questions. She called Lily before bed, her voice cracking when her daughter asked when Mama was coming home. Soon, baby. I promise. You sound tired. Just a little, but I'm okay. Mama? Lily's voice got very small. You're not going to disappear like Daddy did, right? The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. Never. I will never leave you, Lily Flower. Never. Tuesday night, Sarah worked until midnight, her eyes burning from screen glare. Wednesday morning, she arrived at 7 a.m. and found Albert already in his office, looking rumpled and exhausted. Did you sleep here? She asked, bringing him coffee. Couch. He gestured to the leather sofa. Had calls with Tokyo, then London. Easier to just stay. He studied her face. You look like you haven't slept either. Riverside prep. Something flickered across his expression. Diana told you. Yes. He was quiet for a long moment, then stood and closed his office door, something he rarely did. Sarah, I need to tell you something. The board has been pressuring me about you. Her stomach dropped. What do you mean? They think I made an emotional decision hiring you. They've been watching, waiting for you to fail. He ran a hand through his hair. Diana's been feeding them reports. Every mistake, every question you ask, every time you need help. So this is a setup. The words came out flat. The Riverside project. She's setting me up to fail. I don't know. Maybe. Albert's jaw tightened. But Sarah, you have to understand, if Riverside goes badly, I can't protect you. The board will force me to let you go, trial period or not. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you're walking into. He moved closer, and she could smell his cologne mixed with coffee and exhaustion. And because I need you to succeed, not just for your sake or Lily's, but because I was right about you, and I need to prove that to them. The weight of it pressed down on Sarah's shoulders. She wasn't just carrying her own future anymore. She was carrying Albert's judgment, his reputation, his attempt to honor his mother's memory. I won't let you down, she whispered. I know. But Wednesday afternoon, reviewing the Riverside materials with Diana, Sarah discovered a critical error. The financial projections were based on outdated data numbers that were 3 quarters old. Using them would make the entire presentation wrong. This data, Sarah said, carefully pointing to the spreadsheet. It's from last year. The client sent updated figures last month. We need to recalculate everything. Diana's expression was unreadable. The original calculations took Janet 4 weeks. You're suggesting we redo them in 2 days. I'm suggesting we give the client accurate information. And if you can't finish in time, then I'll stay here until I do. Diana studied her for a long moment. Fine. Show me the new calculations by Friday morning. Sarah worked through Wednesday night, dozing for 2 hours on the office couch before Janet found her at 6 a.m. Thursday morning. Good God, Sarah, have you been here all night? The Riverside data was wrong. I have to... Let me help. Janet sat down beside her, and together they rebuilt the financial models, checking and rechecking every number. By Thursday evening, Sarah's vision blurred and her head pounded, but the numbers finally aligned. At 7 p.m., Mrs. Chen called. "Sarah, honey, Lily's asking for you. She's worried." "Can you keep her one more night? I'm so close to finishing." "Of course. But she's scared, darling. She thinks you're going to leave her like her father did." Guilt crashed over Sarah. "Let me talk to her." Lily's voice was thick with tears. "Mama, when are you coming home?" "Tomorrow, baby. I promise. Just one more day." "That's what you said yesterday." I know, and I'm so sorry." Sarah's voice cracked. "But Mama's doing something really important. Something that will make sure we never have to worry about money again." "I don't care about money." Lily's words were small and broken. "I just want you." Sarah buried her face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. This was the price of survival, missing bedtimes and broken promises, and a daughter who was learning too young that work mattered more than her presence. "I love you more than all the stars," Sarah whispered. "More than all the moons," Lily replied, but her voice was hollow. Friday morning, Sarah presented the revised Riverside materials to Diana. They were perfect, every calculation verified, every slide polished, every potential question anticipated. Diana reviewed them in silence, and for the first time, Sarah saw something almost like approval flicker across her face. "This is adequate," Diana said finally. "The presentation is Monday at 10 a.m. Don't be late." Saturday. Sarah slept for 14 hours and woke to find Lily sitting beside her bed, watching her with those two old eyes. "Hi, Mama." "Hi, baby girl." Sarah pulled her close. "I'm so sorry. For this week. For not being there. Mrs. Chen said you're fighting for us." "I am. Always." "But Mama," Lily's voice was very serious, "I don't want you to fight so hard you disappear, like the other mamas at the office who never see their kids." The words struck deep. Sarah thought of the executives she'd seen, brilliant, successful, and desperately lonely, their family photos gathering dust while they lived at the office. Was that the price of belonging? Would she sacrifice Lily's childhood to prove she deserved a seat at the table? "I won't let that happen," Sarah promised. "After Monday, things will be different." Monday morning arrived with cruel clarity. Sarah wore her best outfit, the gray suit she'd splurged on with her first real paycheck, and arrived at 8 a.m. to find the conference room already set up. Albert was there, along with 3 board members Sarah recognized from company photos, and Diana, looking pristine and predatory. The Riverside executives arrived at 9:55, 4 men in expensive suits, carrying the weight of $12 million in their briefcases and expectations. "Shall we begin?" Albert gestured to the conference table. Sarah's hands trembled as she loaded the presentation, but her voice was steady when she started speaking. She walked them through the market analysis, the competitive positioning, the financial projections she'd rebuilt from scratch. She answered questions with confidence born from 3 sleepless nights of preparation. She saw Albert's subtle nod of approval, Diana's grudging acknowledgement, the board members' surprised expressions. Then one of the Riverside executives, a silver-haired man named Patterson, asked, "These projections look solid, but what about the regulatory challenges, the new environmental policies that take effect next quarter?" The room went silent. Sarah's mind raced. Environmental policies. She'd reviewed everything, market data, financial models, competitive analysis, but nothing about new regulations. She looked at Diana, who sat with her arms crossed and an expression that said, "I knew you'd miss something." Sarah's mouth went dry. This was it, the moment she'd fail in front of everyone who mattered. But then something clicked. She remembered a conversation she'd overheard between Albert and Janet 2 weeks ago. Something about sustainability requirements and compliance costs. She'd made a note of it, filed it away, thinking it might be relevant. "The Environmental Protection Act amendments," Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. "They require 15% reduction in carbon emissions by Q3. I've actually factored that into the operational costs, page 17 of the financial appendix. She pulled up the slide she'd added on Thursday night, half asleep and running on coffee and desperation. The room leaned forward, studying the numbers. Patterson smiled. Impressive. Most presentations skip the regulatory analysis entirely. Miss Parker is thorough, Albert said, and the pride in his voice made Sarah's heart soar. The presentation concluded at 11:30, with handshakes and promises to send contracts by Wednesday. As the Riverside executives filed out, Patterson paused beside Sarah. "You're new here, aren't you?" "Yes, sir, 3 months." "Well, you've got a bright future. That was one of the best presentations I've seen." He glanced at Diana. "You should be training your team more like her." After they left the conference room, emptied except for Sarah, Albert, and Diana, the silence stretched taut as wire. "You did well," Diana said finally, and it sounded like the words were physically painful. "Better than I expected." "You expected me to fail. I expected you to be average, to coast on Albert's sympathy." Diana stood gathering her materials. "But you're not average. You're ruthlessly determined, and you don't give up even when you should." She paused at the door. "My daughter would have been your age, 23. She died in a car accident 7 years ago." Sarah's breath caught. She was a single mother too, struggling, proud, refusing help even when she needed it. Diana's voice cracked slightly. "I pushed her too hard, expected too much. And one night, driving home exhausted from her 3rd job, she fell asleep at the wheel." "Diana, I'm so—" "Don't." Diana's composure snapped back into place like armor. "I don't want sympathy. I want you to understand why I've been hard on you. Because I see her in you, and I'll be damned if I watch another young woman work herself to death trying to prove she's worthy." She left before Sarah could respond. Albert moved to Sarah's side, his hand hovering near her shoulder before dropping away. "I didn't know," Sarah whispered. "About her daughter." "No one does. She doesn't talk about it." Albert's voice was gentle. "But now you understand. She wasn't trying to break you. She was trying to make sure you were strong enough to survive this place." "And am I?" Albert smiled. "You just saved a $12 million account with 3 days preparation and no sleep. What do you think?" That afternoon, Janet returned from her mother's treatments and found Sarah at her desk, staring blankly at her computer screen. "I heard about Riverside. The whole office is buzzing." Janet sat on the edge of Sarah's desk. "You're officially a legend. I almost failed. If Patterson hadn't asked about regulations. But he did, and you knew the answer. That's not luck, Sarah. That's being prepared." "Janet." Sarah looked up. "Does it get easier? This constant feeling that you're one mistake away from losing everything." Janet was quiet for a moment. "No, but you learn to trust yourself more, to know that even if you fall, you'll get back up." Friday afternoon, Lily arrived at 3 p.m. as usual, but this time she brought more than just a picture. She'd made a card that read in careful crayon letters, "Mama is the bravest." Albert emerged from his office to greet her as he did every Friday, but today something was different. He crouched down to Lily's level and said, "Your mama did something amazing this week. She worked very hard and saved the company a lot of money. We're all very proud of her." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Really? I think she deserves a celebration. What do you say we all get ice cream after work?" Sarah's heart stuttered. "You don't have to. I want to." Albert stood, and his expression was open in a way she'd never seen. "Besides, I can't remember the last time I had ice cream, and I hear there's a great place 3 blocks from here that does incredible chocolate cones." That evening, the 3 of them sat in a corner booth at Sweet Dreams Ice Cream Parlor. Sarah with vanilla, Lily with chocolate that was already smearing her face, and Albert with mint chip that made him look younger and more human than Sarah had ever seen him. "Mr. Albert," Lily asked between licks, "why don't you have a family?" "Lily." Sarah's face flamed. That's not appropriate. It's okay. Albert smiled, but there was sadness behind it. I work a lot. Haven't had time for a family. That's sad. Lily stated it as simple fact. Everyone needs a family. You're right. Everyone does. You can be part of ours, Lily declared with the confidence of someone who didn't yet understand that life didn't work that way. We have room, right, Mama? Sarah's throat closed. She looked at Albert and saw something raw and vulnerable in his expression, a loneliness so deep it had probably carved out his bones and made a home there. Right, Mama, Lily pressed. Right, Sarah whispered, knowing she was crossing some invisible line, but unable to stop herself. We have room. Albert's hand found hers across the table, and for just a moment they held on like two people drowning who'd finally found something solid to grip. Thank you, he said quietly. Both of you. Walking back to the office to get her things, Lily between them holding both their hands, Sarah realized something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She was falling for Albert Braden. Not because he'd given her a job, or because he had money or power, but because he saw her. Really saw her. The way no one had since before Lily was born, since before she'd become just another desperate single mother fading into the background of other people's lives. At the office building, Lily ran ahead to push the revolving door, leaving Sarah and Albert alone for a moment. Thank you, Sarah said. For today, for all of this. I should be thanking you. Albert's voice was low. You've reminded me why I built this company. Not just to honor my mother, but to create the kind of place where people like you, people with courage and determination, can thrive. Albert, Monday the board meets to decide about your permanent position. His jaw tightened. After Riverside, they can't possibly vote against you. But if they do, I want you to know I'll fight for you, whatever it takes. Why? The question escaped before Sarah could stop it. Why does it matter so much to you? He looked at her, then really looked at her, and she saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. Because somewhere along the way, you and Lily stopped being just an employee and her daughter. You became... He stopped, shook his head. Never mind. Monday. We'll talk after the board meeting. But Sarah heard what he hadn't said. Felt it in the space between them, electric and terrifying and impossibly hopeful. Monday morning, Sarah arrived to find a crowd gathered around the conference room where the board was meeting. Through the glass walls, she could see Albert standing, his expression fierce, arguing with three men in suits. Diana sat at the table, her face unreadable. What's happening? Sarah asked Rebecca. Emergency board meeting. About you. Rebecca grabbed her arm. Two board members are pushing to terminate you anyway. They say Albert's too emotionally compromised to make objective decisions about personnel. Sarah's world tilted. After everything Riverside, the long nights proving herself over and over, they were still trying to get rid of her. I have to go in there. Sarah, you can't. It's a closed meeting. But Sarah was already walking toward the conference room, her fear transmuted into fury. She knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. 6 faces turned toward her. Albert's eyes widened. Sarah, this isn't... I know what this is. Sarah interrupted, her voice steady, despite her racing heart. This is about whether I deserve to be here, so let me speak for myself. One of the board members, a man with steel gray hair and cold eyes, leaned back. Miss Parker, this is highly irregular. So was a 4-year-old walking into a CEO's office. But that's what happened. And that little girl believed her mother was worthy of a chance. Sarah looked each board member in the eye. I know what you think. That I'm a charity case. That Albert made an emotional decision. That I don't belong in your world. Miss Parker, Diana began, but Sarah held up a hand. I'm not finished. I don't have an MBA. I don't have connections or polish or the right pedigree, but I saved your Riverside account. I work harder than anyone else in this building. and I'm not going anywhere." Her voice rose. "Because my daughter is watching, and I will not teach her that being a single mother means being disposable." Silence fell like snow. Then Diana Frost stood. "For the record, I vote to make Miss Parker's position permanent. She's earned it." Every head swiveled toward her in shock. The gray-haired board member cleared his throat. "Diana, you've been the most vocal critic of this hire." "I was testing her. She passed." Diana's voice was firm. "She's tough, dedicated, and she doesn't quit. Exactly what this company needs." The vote that followed was 4-2 in Sarah's favor. When Albert announced it, his smile could have lit the entire building. "Welcome permanently to Braden & Company, Miss Parker." Sarah walked out of that conference room knowing that she'd finally done it. Not just survived, but thrived. Not just proven herself to them, but to herself. That Friday, when Lily arrived for her weekly visit, she brought a picture of a house with 3 people standing in front of it. Not stick figures this time, but carefully colored drawings with details: a man in a suit, a woman in a dress, a little girl in pink. "That's our family," Lily told Albert, handing him the picture. And watching Albert's face as he looked at that drawing, Sarah knew that somewhere between her first desperate day and this moment of triumph, they'd all become something neither of them had planned, but both of them needed: a family. The weeks that followed Sarah's permanent appointment felt like living in a dream she was terrified of waking from. October surrendered to November, and the city dressed itself in early holiday lights, while Sarah settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal, arriving at 8:30, leaving by 6, actually eating lunch in the break room with Rebecca and the others who'd stopped seeing her as the charity case and started seeing her as one of them. But the drawing Lily had made, the one showing 3 people as a family, remained on Albert's desk, and Sarah couldn't stop thinking about what it meant. Or what she wanted it to mean. Albert had grown different around her, more careful. He'd catch himself smiling at her and look away quickly. He'd reach for her hand to emphasize a point during meetings and pull back at the last second. Once, when Sarah brought him coffee at 7 p.m., and found him staring out at the city with that bone-deep loneliness etched across his features, he'd turned to her and opened his mouth like he wanted to confess something. But then his phone had rung, and the moment shattered. "I should go," Sarah had said, backing toward the door. "Stay." The word came out raw. "Please, just stay. For a few minutes." So she'd sat on his office couch while he took the call, and when he finished, he'd joined her there instead of returning to his desk. They'd talked about nothing important. The weather, Lily's upcoming school play. A funny thing Marcus, the security guard, had said, but underneath it all was something unspoken and electric humming between them like a live wire. "Sarah," he'd said, finally. "I need to tell you something." Her heart had stopped. "Okay." But his phone rang again, and he'd sighed with what looked like equal parts relief and frustration. "Tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow." Tomorrow had become next week, and next week became 2 weeks, and the conversation hung between them like a promise and a threat. Then 3 weeks before Christmas, Diana Frost appeared at Sarah's desk with an expression that might have been attempting a smile. "The annual gala is December 20th, she announced. "It's the company's biggest event. Clients, investors, board members, everyone who matters. Albert would like you to attend." Sarah blinked. "As staff, to help coordinate." "As a guest." Diana's almost smile twitched. "He specifically requested your presence, and Lily's." "Lily's, but it's a formal event." "He was very clear, both of you. He's even arranged for a dress for you." Diana placed a business card on Sarah's desk. "Boutique on 5th Avenue. They're expecting you Saturday at 2 p.m. After Diana left, Rebecca rolled her chair over, eyes wide. "Holy shit! Do you know what this means? That I need to find a babysitter for Lily?" "No, you beautiful idiot. It means Albert Braden wants you there. As his... Rebecca's eyes went wider. Oh my God. Sarah, are you two... No. Sarah's face flamed. We're not, there's nothing... Yet. Rebecca grinned. There's nothing yet. That night, lying awake in her new apartment, the one she could finally afford with 2 bedrooms and hot water that actually worked, Sarah stared at the ceiling and let herself imagine it. What if Albert's carefully controlled distance wasn't professionalism, but fear? What if he was holding back for the same reason she was terrified that acknowledging these feelings would ruin everything they'd built? Mama. Lily appeared in her doorway. Mr. Hoppers dangling from one hand. Can't sleep. Just thinking, baby. Come here. Lily climbed into bed, curling against Sarah's side. About Mr. Albert? Sarah's breath caught. What makes you say that? You smile different when you talk about him, like how princesses smile in stories. He's my boss, Lily. He's more than that. Lily's voice held that ancient wisdom again. He looks at you like Daddy should have looked at you, like you're the most important person in the whole world. Sarah's eyes burned. Baby, we can't, it's complicated. Why? Because grown-ups make everything complicated. Lily sat up, fixing Sarah with a serious stare. Mr. Albert is sad when he's not with us, and you're happier when he's around. Why can't we all just be together? Because life doesn't work like fairy tales, sweetheart. Maybe it should, Lily said stubbornly, and fell asleep before Sarah could respond. Saturday afternoon, Sarah stood in the boutique on 5th Avenue feeling like a fraud. The saleswoman, whose name tag read Simone, looked her up and down with the practiced assessment of someone who could price your entire existence in seconds. You're the Parker appointment. Yes. Excellent. Mr. Braden has wonderful taste. Simone gestured toward the back. We've pulled several options. The dresses hanging in the private fitting room were beyond anything Sarah had ever imagined, wearing silk and satin and lace in colors that seemed too rich to be real. Sarah touched one hesitantly, and the fabric whispered against her fingertips like a secret. Try the emerald, Simone instructed. With your coloring, it will be stunning. 20 minutes later, Sarah stared at herself in the 3-way mirror and didn't recognize the woman looking back. The emerald dress hugged her figure perfectly, the neckline elegant without being revealing, the hem falling to just above her ankles. Simone had pinned her hair up loosely, and suddenly Sarah looked like someone who belonged in Albert's world. Perfect, Simone declared. Now for the little one. Lily emerged from her fitting room in a pink dress that made her look like a princess from the stories she loved. She spun, giggling as the skirt flared out. Mama, look at me. I see you, baby girl. You're beautiful. We both are, Lily said seriously. Mr. Albert is going to be so happy. The morning of the gala, Sarah woke with butterflies rioting in her stomach. She spent an hour on her hair and makeup following a YouTube tutorial Rebecca had sent her. Lily sat beside her at the bathroom mirror, watching intently. Mama, are you nervous? Very. Why, you're already the prettiest, Mama. It's not about pretty baby. It's about... Sarah paused, trying to explain fears too complex for a 5-year-old. It's about fitting in with people who are very different from us. But Mr. Albert doesn't care about that stuff. He cares about people who are brave and kind. Lily took Sarah's hand. And you're the bravest and kindest person I know. The gala was held at the Grand Continental Hotel in a ballroom that looked like something from a movie about royalty. Crystal chandeliers dripped light across hundreds of guests in tuxedos and evening gowns. A string quartet played near the far wall. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than Sarah's weekly grocery budget. Sarah stood at the entrance holding Lily's hand, suddenly certain this was a terrible mistake. She didn't belong here. Everyone would see through the expensive dress to the girl who'd worn taped-together shoes and worked 3 jobs and ate ramen for dinner most nights. Sarah. Albert's voice, and she turned to find him in a tuxedo that made her forget how to breathe. He looked at her like she was the only person in the room, and something in his expression made her feel beautiful and seen and impossibly brave. "Albert, you look not as good as you." His voice was rough. "That dress, you're stunning." "Mr. Albert." Lily threw herself at him, and he caught her, lifting her up. "Hello, Lily. Don't you look like a princess?" "Mama does too." "Yes," Albert said softly, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. "She really does." The evening unfolded like a dream. Albert introduced them to everyone, important board members who smiled politely, clients who looked curious, investors who assessed Sarah with calculating eyes. She felt their judgment, saw the questions behind their smiles. Who was this woman with the CEO? Why was a child at a formal business event? But Albert's hand stayed at the small of her back, steady and reassuring, and Sarah found strength she didn't know she had. Diana Frost appeared beside them during dinner, and for once her expression was almost warm. "You clean up well, Parker." "Thanks, I think." "That was a compliment?" Diana's lips twitched. "My daughter would have liked you. She had the same stubborn determination." "Diana," Sarah said impulsively, "would you like to meet Lily properly?" Diana's mask slipped, showing raw grief underneath. "I don't know if I—" But Lily was already there, holding out a piece of paper. "I drew you a picture. Mama said you lost your daughter, so I made you this." It was a drawing of an angel with red hair smiling down from clouds. Diana's hand shook as she took it. Why is she? "Mama says people we love become angels," Lily said simply, "so they can watch over us forever." Diana pressed the drawing to her chest, tears streaming down her face, and walked away quickly. But later, Sarah saw it tucked carefully into Diana's purse and knew that somehow, inexplicably, her daughter had given a grieving mother a moment of grace. At 9 p.m., Albert stood and tapped his champagne glass for attention. The room quieted, hundreds of faces turning toward him. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," he began, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "This company has had an incredible year, and that's because of the brilliant people who work here." Standard CEO speech. Sarah started to relax. "But I want to tell you about something that happened 6 months ago. Something that changed my perspective on everything." Sarah's stomach dropped. He wouldn't. He couldn't. A 4-year-old girl walked into my office wearing a pink dress and carrying her mother's resume. She told me her mother was the smartest, bravest person in the world. She told me that her mother's greatest dream was to buy her ice cream every Saturday. The room was silent. Every eye found Sarah and Lily. That little girl was right. Her mother is remarkable. Sarah Parker came to this company with nothing but determination and courage. She was a single mother working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, sacrificing everything for her daughter. And when I gave her a chance, just one chance, she exceeded every expectation. Albert's voice grew thick with emotion. "My own mother was a single parent. She worked herself to death trying to give me opportunities. I built this company to honor her memory. But until Sarah and Lily walked into my life, I'd forgotten what I was really building for." He looked directly at Sarah, and the entire room faded away. "I was building it for people like them. For single mothers who deserve more than society's judgment. For children who believe their parents can do anything. For families that love transcends biology and circumstances." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. Lily squeezed her hand tight. "Sarah Parker taught me that courage walks into your life in the smallest shoes. That family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up, who stays, who believes in you when you've stopped believing in yourself." Albert descended from the stage and walked directly to Sarah. The room held its collective breath. "You saved me," he said quietly, for her ears only. "Both of you. You reminded me why success matters, not for its own sake, but because it gives us the power to lift others up." "Albert, I'm not finished." He took both her hands. 6 months ago, I was alone in a building full of people, successful but hollow. And then this impossible girl walked into my office and said, "Mama needs this job." And suddenly, I had a reason to come to work that had nothing to do with profit margins and everything to do with proving that courage deserves reward. The ballroom was so quiet, Sarah could hear her own heartbeat. "I'm in love with you," Albert said, and gasps rippled through the crowd. "I've been in love with you for months, but I was terrified that saying it would ruin everything, that you'd think I was taking advantage, that I'd lose you both." Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this man who'd given her everything and was now offering her even more. "You don't have to say anything," Albert continued quickly. "I just needed you to know. Both of you have become my family, the only family that matters. And whatever happens, that won't change." Lily tugged Albert's sleeve. "Mr. Albert, are you asking to be my daddy?" The question crashed through the ballroom like thunder. Albert crouched down to Lily's level, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Would you want that, for me to be your daddy?" "Yes." No hesitation. "Because you love Mama, and you love me, and that's what daddies do." "Then yes." Albert's voice broke. "If your mama will have me, I would be honored to be your daddy." Every eye turned to Sarah. She stood there in her emerald dress, mascara running heart so full it hurt, and thought about the impossible journey that had brought her here. From a hospital bed fevered and desperate, to a 4-year-old walking into a CEO's office, to 3 months of proving herself, to this moment where a man who'd built an empire was offering her not just security, but love. "You're sure?" Sarah whispered. "Because we're complicated. We're messy. We're—" "Everything I need," Albert finished. "Sarah, I've spent 20 years trying to fill a hole my mother's death left. But it wasn't until you and Lily that I realized I wasn't trying to fill it. I was trying to honor it, and you let me do that. You let me be better than I was." "I love you," Sarah said, and saying it felt like jumping off a cliff and learning to fly. "I've loved you for months, but I was so scared." Albert kissed her then in front of 500 guests and board members and colleagues and people who mattered, and Sarah kissed him back with everything she'd been holding inside for 6 impossible months. When they finally pulled apart, Lily was grinning so wide her face might split. "Does this mean we're a real family now?" "Yes," Albert said, pulling both of them close. "We're a real family." The ballroom erupted in applause, and Sarah realized that everyone was smiling, even the board members who'd tried to fire her, even the investors who'd thought she was a charity case, even Diana Frost, who was crying openly and clapping like her hands might break. Rebecca pushed through the crowd and grabbed Sarah in a fierce hug. "I told you, I freaking told you." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and champagne, and Lily dancing with anyone who asked. At midnight, standing on the hotel balcony overlooking the city, Albert wrapped his arms around Sarah from behind. "What are you thinking?" he murmured against her hair. "That 6 months ago, I was in a hospital bed believing I'd failed my daughter, that I'd never be enough, that single mothers were invisible and disposable and destined to struggle forever. And now I know that courage matters, that love shows up in unexpected ways, that family isn't about perfection, it's about showing up for each other." Albert turned her to face him. "Marry me." Sarah's breath caught. "What? Marry me. Not because you need security or because I can provide for you, but because I can't imagine spending another day without you and Lily officially being mine." "Albert, I know it's fast. I know we should probably date first and take it slow and do everything the right way." His hands cupped her face. "But I've spent my whole life doing things the right way, and I've never been this happy. So marry me, Sarah Parker. Let me be Lily's father and your husband, and the luckiest man alive." "Yes," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, yes, yes." Albert kissed her again, and somewhere inside the ballroom, Lily cheered. 6 months later, on a June afternoon, when the city bloomed with summer heat, and possibility Sarah Parker became Sarah Braden in a ceremony held in the company courtyard. Lily was the flower girl wearing a white dress with pink ribbons, scattering petals with dramatic flair. Diana Frost stood beside Sarah as an unexpected but fiercely protective matron of honor. Rebecca and Janet held tissues and cried through the entire ceremony, as Sarah and Albert exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish and show up for each other through whatever came. Sarah thought about the impossible journey that had led here. A desperate mother, a brave daughter, a lonely CEO, and the courage it took to believe that people who'd been invisible could become seen, that families could be built from brokenness, that love could arrive in the smallest shoes. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared, and Albert kissed Sarah like she was the only woman in the world. At the reception, Lily clinged her glass and demanded everyone's attention. "I have something to say." The room quieted. Lily stood on her chair, all 6 years of her fierce and bright and impossibly brave. "When I was 4, I walked into Mr. Albert's office because Mama was too sick to go to her interview. Everyone said I shouldn't have done that. That little kids don't belong in big buildings with important people." She looked around at the crowd of executives and board members and people who'd once judged them. "But I think little kids belong everywhere. Because we see things grown-ups forget. Like how love is more important than money. And how families aren't about blood, they're about who shows up when you need them most." Lily turned to Albert and Sarah. "Thank you for being my family. For showing me that brave things have happy endings. And that sometimes when you walk into scary places and ask for help, the world gives you more than you ever dreamed." She held up her juice glass. "To Mama and Daddy, the bravest people I know. To courage," Albert added his arm around Sarah, "in the smallest shoes. To family," Sarah whispered, pulling them both close. "However it finds us." Everyone raised their glasses, and Sarah looked around at the impossible family they'd built. Diana, who'd learned to grieve by protecting others. Rebecca and the office friends who'd become sisters, Mrs. Chen, who'd been there from the beginning. Marcus, who always had cookies ready. Janet, who'd taught Sarah everything. Even the board members who'd doubted her, but now looked proud. Later, when the party wound down and guests filtered home, Sarah found Albert standing alone by the courtyard fountain, staring up at the stars. "What are you thinking?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. "That my mother would have loved you. Both of you." His voice was thick. That maybe all those years of trying to honor her memory, maybe this was how. Not by building an empire, but by building a family, by giving someone else the chance she never had. "She'd be proud of you," Sarah said softly. "Not because you're successful, but because you're kind." "We made it," Albert whispered. "Against all odds. We made it." We did. They stood there in the darkness, the city lights glittering around them like fallen stars. And Sarah thought about the long road from hospital despair to this moment of joy. About a 4-year-old in a pink dress carrying her mother's resume. About a lonely CEO who'd been waiting for someone to see past his success to his loneliness. About courage that walked in on small feet and changed 3 lives forever. "Mama, Daddy." Lily appeared still in her flower girl dress, Mr. Hoppers tucked under one arm. "Can we get ice cream now? It's Saturday." Albert laughed and scooped her up. "Every Saturday, princess. I promised, didn't I?" "You did, and you never break promises." They walked together toward the ice cream shop 3 blocks away, and Sarah realized this was her life now. Not struggling and surviving, but living and thriving. Not invisible, but seen. Not alone, but surrounded by love that had arrived in the most unexpected way. "More than all the stars," Sarah whispered to Lily as they sat on their favorite bench, ice cream cones dripping in the summer heat. "More than all the moons," Lily whispered back and added, "More than all the everything." Albert pulled them both close. "More than all the everything," he agreed. And in that moment, watching her daughter eat chocolate ice cream while her husband's arm wrapped around her shoulders, Sarah Parker Braden understood that courage meant more than just surviving. It meant believing that impossible things could happen, that single mothers weren't disposable, that 4-year-olds could change the world, that love could heal wounds 20 years old, that sometimes the smallest shoes carried the bravest hearts, and those hearts could save everyone they touched. The city hummed around them, full of stories and struggles and people fighting their own battles. But for Sarah, Albert, and Lily, this was their victory. Not against poverty or judgment or loneliness, but for something better. A family built not from perfection, but from courage, hope, and the radical belief that everyone deserves to be seen. "Ready to go home?" Albert asked as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. "Yes," Sarah said, and for the first time in her life, that word meant something beautiful. Home wasn't a place. It was these two people beside her. This impossible family. This life they'd built from courage and ice cream and the smallest shoes. They walked home together through the summer evening, and behind them, their story rippled out into the world, whispered in offices and break rooms, shared among single mothers who needed hope, told to children who needed to believe that bravery mattered. The story of a girl who walked into a CEO's office and said, "I'm here for my mama's interview." The story of a mother who never gave up. The story of a man who learned that success means nothing without someone to share it with. And the story of how love sometimes walks into your life wearing the smallest shoes.